Hi, I'm Michael Schnecke, and I'm the artist behind the Oliver Family Trading Cards. Between my personal enjoyment of baseball, the nostalgic feelings of collecting cards growing up and still today, as well as the history of baseball in our area, I felt that creating a card was a natural fit for the competition. I used the 1971 Topps as a model with a classic black background, and their design in the back as well with a little bit of information. And I just had fun making them, and I hope you guys enjoyed them too.
I'm Mary Ann Fertile. I've been a dedicated pastel artist since 2006, and when the call for entries came for the Copshaholm 125th Arts Competition, I thought this was a suitable venue to create a pastel painting and capture one of my favorite locations on the grounds of the History Museum, which are the Copshaholm Gardens. So I got a late start on the competition, and so September 6th, I came out with my phone and took photos. It was a beautiful sunny day, and wandered around the grounds. And when I came down into the gardens and looked up, there were these beautiful red geraniums. And then beyond that, when I looked up, there was the mansion, and I thought, this is my shot. So I took several photos from down below and different angles, and once I got home, I reviewed all my reference images and found a particular shot that I liked, edited out a few little things like some of the hanging basket poles, and from there I blew it up and transferred it onto my paper. And with pastels, it's a soft and hard medium that are put together with a binder. So what I did was take a burgundy color underneath all the greens and put a dark green over it, and then I use an isopropyl alcohol. And you can brush that over and get a lovely little effect, almost a watercolor look. Then in creating the flowers down below, I really liked the looseness when I started working into this, and since my primary focus was going to be the geraniums and this particular geranium, I liked leaving this portion loose. And then as I started to move around the piece and work into it, having created that base with my alcohol wash, I was able to go in with some other colors and lighter colors onto the hedges and the bushes, and I worked on the trees. And while I didn't want a architectural precise rendering of Copshaholm, I really wanted to focus on the main features, the roof line and the coloration and the stonework on here. So once I had completed and got my basic information in, I applied all my colors, and then at the end I went back and really focused in on the colors below. What I really liked was the looseness on the left side coming up, the more detailed work, and then putting it all, giving it a sense of place, was the mansion here. And what I also liked were the two trees on either side framing it, and that beautiful blue sky behind it. And so from there I pulled some of that same blue and I captured it down below here. So I felt it was a fitting gesture and homage to Copshaholm and the beautiful gardens, and focusing on this beautiful home here. So I hope you appreciate my pastel competition entry here on the Gardens of Copshaholm.
Hi, my name is Amy Cox. I am the Director of Music and Fun at Clay Church here in South Bend. I wrote this song after coming and visiting the Oliver Mansion, and really just taking hold of how much one house can hold. Over a century of stories and lives lived here, and seeing it evolve and change and grow is really, but still be beautiful and still capture the heart of its very beginning. And so this song is called Echoes. Step back in time as you walk through the door, and paintings and pictures and oak-covered floors, over a century of memories stored. You can almost imagine the lives lived here, the butlers, the ball gowns that sweep through the years. And if you stand quiet, you might just hear an echo, an echo of all that's been and all that will be in this house built of stones and dreams, by the hearts who build and change and grow. They leave behind echoes, dance in the ballroom without a care, spinning in circles, tiptoe down the stairs, run through the doors to summer night air, and lay in the garden and gaze at the sky. If dreams are like stars, we are endless tonight. We'll join the legacy they leave behind. An echo, an echo of all that's been and all that will be in this house built of stones and dreams. May we always build and change and grow. We'll leave behind echoes. Stroll by the river neath city lights. Imagine a forest lit by the moonlight. So much has changed, may we hold tight to echoes.
I'm Rhonda Spalding, and I actually would consider myself a gardener more than an artist, and I have been creating floral designs from the flowers that grow in my garden at home, and so I created lots of ladies out of my garden flowers. And when this project came up, I had been visiting Copshaholm a lot as a docent in training, and was just had a lot of that on my mind, and thought, oh, I could make kind of an Edwardian lady, thinking about Anna and Gertrude and Catherine, who lived here, and it was their home. And so that kind of inspired this image in my head of the flowing gown. And then I was able to use some older pictures of Copshaholm and layer them through the years to sort of show that transition of time, and then this lady representing Copshaholm herself. and I called it She Copshaholm, and I entered this actually into the art part of the visual art part of this competition. And after it was completed, I was actually laying on my couch one day after having been out in the garden, and I just started kind of like working on this poem, and then I thought, oh, I'll enter that in the written. Well, actually, I was encouraged to do that. So the image here is called She Copshaholm, and the poem is by the same name. Now the once bustling, boisterous abode sits quietly. Her sounds long slip softly to silence. But the flowers, the clump of trees, the chiseled stones still speak, and new voices share her old stories.
Hi, my name is Pam Gunterman, and I enjoy writing poetry. It's something I've done since I was a child. Whenever the mood strikes me, be it a situation, a life experience, I try to write it down in words so that I can capture that moment for myself at that moment, and then to reread and capture it again when I reread it. It's something that I find therapeutic, and I have often written things for special occasions for people when have been inspired to do so. I was especially inspired by this competition because I have always had a fondness for Copshaholm. My mother was born in Scotland, so there is a connection there that she felt when she first toured this home. And I have often enjoyed touring it with my husband, and then once they started Mystery at the Mansion, I enjoyed that and then became involved as an actor in that. I have enjoyed acting in both the Christmas at Copshaholm and the mystery. I wanted to write something and was inspired to write something about Copshaholm. As I see it, the home itself as an inviting presence, and I've tried to capture that in the poem that I submitted for the 125th anniversary. So without further ado, I'll share that with you. This is titled Copshaholm. She stands in stately elegance on West Washington, a great lady, home to the Oliver family who hailed originally from Scotland. She bears the name of the town of Father James's birth. She welcomed her family home in January 1897 and wrapped them in her protection and warmth. Generations grew under her care and shared the joys and sorrows of their daily lives under her roof. They laughed and cried, married and died in her strong arms. From business conducted in the den, family dinners in the dining room, letters written and books read in the library, to the parties held for many and dancing in the ballroom, she is a hostess supreme. Long after the family left her care, their children and grandchildren continued to gather under her roof for a visit or a home game, basking once again in the light of her rooms, which had nurtured their ancestors and told the stories of another time. She is a gift to all who visit her, and to this day, welcomes visitors who explore her rooms and learn of the long history she still holds in her walls and her halls. For a century and a quarter, she has stood and withstood the test of time and remains the great lady she was created to be.
Hi, my name is Sherry Fox, and I will be reading a short story that I wrote for the competition. I started writing, journaling off and on all my life, but in my 20s I had an interest in writing stories and have played around with that off and on over the years. I was delighted to have the opportunity to write this story for the guidelines that were put out,
and I was inspired to write this story as I volunteer here at the museum. I play piano once a week in the Copshaholm for the tours that go on, and being surrounded by the grandeur and the beauty of the house is just a wonderful experience. And then imagining what it would be like for Anna and her 4 children to move into such a grand place in 1897 just really got my imagination going. And so from that, this is the story that I will be presenting. It's called Moving Day by Sherry Fox. Is it time yet, Mama? Is it time? Joe Jr. asked for the umpteenth time. Just about, dear, his mother, Anna, absent-mindedly replied. She was busy deciding what last items to send over to the big house, as she referred to it in her own mind, later that afternoon. But what about all our stuff, he demanded. We gonna carry it all down the street when we go? Anna laughed and gave her full attention to her youngest son. Of course not, she said, as she bent down to his level and scooped him into a hug. A fine sight that would be, us marching down the street, our household possessions trailing behind us. She tickled him until the giggles replaced his stern countenance. We, she continued as she straightened to her full height, will be taking the carriage to our new home. She tweaked his nose. And the rest of our stuff will be brought over this afternoon in the wagon. Anyways, dummy, James said as he raced past his little brother and mother to peer out the front door. Father had all the important stuff moved yesterday. He had thought about leaving you here with that stuff that's not moving, but Mother insisted that you come. He raced back out of the room, calling to Gertrude, "Carriage is not here yet." Anna held back the rebuke on her tongue as her oldest raced down the hall and up the back stairs. He had come and gone so fast, there had been no time to address the name-calling, or the running in the house, or the using of the back stairs. Calling him back now would make them late. Although the carriage was not here, as her son had so loudly proclaimed, it would be any minute and they would need to go. Instead, she glanced down at Joe Jr. You know that is not true. Your father would never leave you anywhere. Joe Jr. sighed, his tiny shoulders heaving up and down. Then he smiled up at his mother. It's okay, Mama. I know he was just teasing. Anna smiled back. How about you find your coat and wait by the door while I make sure the baby is ready? She smiled and stroked his hair into place, then headed up the stairs. Gertrude met her mother as she was coming down the steps, buttoning her coat. Nurse says the baby is ready, Mother. Anna smiled at her eldest daughter. At 8 years of age, she was already showing graciousness to those around her and had a blessed, helpful spirit towards her younger siblings. Thank you, Gertrude. Do you know where James went? Last time I saw him, he was sneaking up the back stairs to the attic bedrooms, Gertrude replied as she continued her way downstairs. Oh, could you help Joe Jr. with his buttons, please? And make sure his mittens are ready for his hands when we go out? Of course, Gertrude replied. Anna sighed as she continued up the stairs to their bedroom, where the baby had been sleeping. Anna smiled to herself at the thought of her husband's insistence that the babies be close enough at night that they could attend to their needs. You can't get much closer than the same room, she thought, and then caught herself as that familiar sadness crept into her eyes. Will living in that great big house be the same? She quickly composed her thoughts and her face as she entered the room. Nearly ready, Mrs. Oliver, Nurse said as she efficiently gathered the baby's outer clothing and extra blanket to bundle her up at the door. Catherine laughed and waved her hands in the air at the sight of her mother. Mama, Mama, she exclaimed. Anna hugged the baby as Nurse continued. I've checked the children's rooms and they have placed their final belongings in their bags on their beds as instructed. They will be brought over this afternoon. It was sure helpful for Mr. Oliver to arrange for the large items and whatnots to be sent over yesterday. It will make it easier for you and the children to settle in today. Anna was grateful for her husband's thoughtfulness. He has looked after every detail building this new house and getting us there, sane and in our right minds, she mused. Thank you, nurse. If everything is ready with Catherine, I will meet you at the door. Gertrude and Joe Jr. are already waiting. I'm going to check upstairs and see what James is up to, she finished to herself as she left the room. Quietly, she ascended the stairs to the children's rooms. Sure enough, James was up to something. She walked into his room just as he quickly closed the cupboard door and turned around. Anna went to the cupboard without a word and opened it. Even as James stammered, he was just making sure it was empty, only to find Joe Jr.'s favorite stuffed dog hidden inside. She took the small toy and put it safely in her handbag. You know he can't sleep without this, she chided. I was only going to have some fun with him. I'd have him come back for it. It is time to go, Anna stated. You can wait by the door with the rest of the children. She pointed to the stairs and followed James down the 2 set flights to the foyer. Joe Jr. was dutifully waiting in the vestibule for his mother with his coat buttoned up, thanks to Gertrude's assistance. The carriage is here, Mrs. Oliver, Nurse said as she busied herself getting Catherine into her warm clothing. Anna buttoned her own coat, opening the door. Ready, everyone? She asked as she held it open. You bet! James was out the door and halfway to the carriage before the words were out of his mouth. Anna took the bundled up Catherine in her arms as Nurse gathered up the baby's things. Gertrude held her little brother's hand as they both carefully descended the icy stairs and made it to the sidewalk. Holding the railing with her free hand, Anna followed. Where's Papa? Gertrude asked, glancing around as she approached the carriage, hurrying Joe Jr. past the horse so he wouldn't be tempted to stop and pet the working animal. He's already there, dummy, James was quick to say as he jumped out of the carriage to see what was taking them so long. He's waiting for us to make our big entrance, so hurry up already. Anna was quick enough this time to catch him and stop him in his tracks. That's enough, James. No more calling your siblings names. James stood respectfully while his mother reprimanded him, but was off at top speed and into the carriage as soon as she was done, apparently unaffected by her words. With the help of the nurse, the Olivers family was soon bundled into the carriage. Baby Catherine was enthroned on Anna's lap for the quick ride down Main Street to Washington and then the 4 blocks to their new home. Joe Jr. sat quietly next to his mother. Reaching for her hand, he asked, When will my bed get to the new house? Will it be there for me to sleep in tonight? We decided to leave the beds behind, Anna replied. You mean we won't any of us sleep in beds no more? Joe Jr. exclaimed. James piped in. Of course we will. He stammered to a halt at the look from his mother. Of course we will. There will be new beds in the new house, along with a lot of other new things, because the new house is huge. So huge, in fact, that you might get lost in it and we will never find you, ever. Joe Jr.'s eyes got large and round at such a notion. Is that true? Anna was quick to answer. There are new beds for us to sleep in, and the house is very large, but you will not get lost. So where's my room gonna be? Up the stairs again? No, Anna continued. All of our bedrooms are on the same floor. Joe Jr. was glad to hear that. And they are all connected with special doors and hallways so we can get from one bedroom to the next without having to go out into the house proper. Joe Jr. was very glad to hear that. And you're going to sleep in the nursery with baby Catherine because you're a baby too, James teased. Am not, Joe Jr. replied hotly. Yes, you are. You're a 4-year-old baby, James, his mother's voice warned. I am not a 4-year-old baby, James, Joe Jr. continued. I'm going to be 5 in, how much, Mama? 14 days, dear. 14 days, and mine's going to be the first celebration in the new house because I'm going to be 5, and that's a big deal. Joe Jr. didn't have time for this so there, because Gertrude was excitedly pointing out the window. There it is, it's that one, right, Mama? Her excitement overruling her etiquette, she continued to point and exclaim, The big house, there on the corner. There it is, Mama, it looks like a castle. They all grew quiet as the horse slowly pulled the carriage past the impressive 3-story structure to get to the driveway. The silence was not broken, as each contemplated what life might be like behind those strong stone walls, until the carriage stopped under the porte cochere. Soon, the carriage door was being opened, and James was leaping the gap to the porch, not missing a beat or bothering with the steep steps. As he pulled at the wood screen door, his mother called, "Not that one, James. We're meeting your father at the main entry around front." "But Mother, this door is right here. Why can't we just use it?" "James, I don't have time to argue. Wait right there on the porch for the rest of us." James sullenly stood waiting, brushing the fine coating of snow that had blown under the wide porch roof around with his boot, leaving swirls of colors as the tiny square stones of the mosaic flooring were exposed, and then covered up again by the whoosh of his boot. Gertrude was out of the carriage next, being assisted down the steps of the carriage and up the steep stone stairs leading to the high porch. Nurse followed and was handed baby Catherine, as Anna was assisted safely onto the porch. "Your turn, little fella," the coachman said as he lifted Joe Jr. from the coach and placed him safely next to his mother. Anna took baby Catherine from the nurse. "Thank you, nurse. We will meet you inside." Seeing that Gertrude had a hold of Joe Jr.'s hand, she proceeded to lead her children along the covered porch to the front of the house. The cold winter wind whipped past them like a freight train down its tracks, and Anna almost laughed out loud. Here was one detail that was not foreseen. Of course, the same cooling breeze in the summertime would be a welcome addition to the front porch. Already, her mind was imagining what type of furniture would suit the wide veranda spaces and where she could place them. Her smile increased as they rounded the corner and were greeted by J.D. "You made it," he beamed as he embraced each child in turn and kissed Anna on the cheek. The cold weather allowed for this private moment without the usual onlookers. That, and the day, January 1st, and early at that. J.D. smiled. "Welcome home, family," J.D. said as he swung open both of the thick 4.5-foot double oak doors. The inner door of the vestibule was strategically left open, despite the cold, so that J.D. could usher his family into their new home more quickly. As they passed through the vestibule and stepped beyond the guest receiving area into the main hall proper, Anna's eyes filled with tears. In awe, she gazed up at the wide oak staircase and onto the second-floor galley. The bleak winter sunshine was just enough to lighten the stained glass window that shone on the second-floor landing's balcony. Here, she imagined, guests would be announced, or speeches made by important visitors to those gathered below. J.D. noticed his wife's tears. "Are you okay? Is something wrong with the house?" Anna laughed through her tears. No. It's just more beautiful than I ever imagined, J.D." She shifted Catherine in her arms so she could wipe her tears with her handkerchief. Beautiful and perfect. Anna slowly crossed the hall and peered out the doors onto the back veranda, now covered with snow. Anna was pleased with this more private outdoor space, protected on the west by J.D.'s office and on the east by the servants' stairs and kitchen area. This south-facing patio would prove warm and protected from the cold winds of spring and fall. Joe Jr. was staying close to his mother as Gertrude peered into the massive fireplace. "Papa, this one is big enough to sleep in." James had climbed the stairs to the balcony and was calling them all back where he could see them. "And now, my subjects," he began in mock pontification, "I, your king, do hereby decree." J.D. and Anna laughed as James continued instructing his imagined masses in 11-year-old boy wisdom, as only James could do. "Someday," Anna leaned into J.D. and shared, "our daughters will stand there, being presented as young women or even as brides." J.D. laughed as baby Catherine chose that moment to raise her voice to match her brother's. "Well, since that is a ways off yet, how about we get yours and the children's coats taken care of, and we can go about exploring our new home properly." The nurse came and took Catherine, who was beginning to get fussy and tired from the morning excitement. If you please, Mrs. Oliver, I'll take Catherine up to the nursery and get her settled. That would be fine. And seeing the sag in Joe Jr.'s shoulders and the tired circles under his eyes, she called him over. Joe, I was wondering if you could help me out by taking this up to the nursery with Nurse and Catherine and settling him into his new home. She pulled the stuffed dog out of her handbag. I think you will find more of your favorite toys waiting for you, and a few new surprises as well. Joe Jr. took his favorite stuffed animal and followed Nurse and Catherine up to the nursery. For him, exploring the house could wait. James, having grown tired of the balcony, had already made it up to the third floor and back, but only far enough that his head could be seen peering down at his parents 2 stories below. There's a billiards table up here, Father. Did you know there was a billiards table up here? Can I play, Papa, please? JD and Anna laughed. That would be fine, son. I'll be up to see how you're doing in a bit. And to Anna, he said, and to play a bit myself. But first, where do we start? Anna smiled up into her husband's face. How about the library? And with her arm in his, and with Gertrude darting ahead, they strolled first into the library, with its bookcases fitted to the curve of the tower wall, waiting to be filled with favorite volumes of stories and ideas. As Gertrude paused in front of the uniquely designed fireplace in this room, she asked her father, Are all the fireplaces as huge as the house? JD chuckled. Well, the ones upstairs are smaller, I guess, to fit the smaller rooms. Don't you like them, Gertrude? Gertrude thought for a minute, her face reflecting her serious contemplation of the fireplace, while her father's eyes twinkled. Yes, Father, I like them. They are just different than what I've been used to. And solemnly laying her hand on his jacketed arm, she confessed, It may take some getting used to. JD laughed and pulled the child into an embrace. Well, thank goodness for that. From the library, they stepped directly into the dining room, but didn't linger as the table was being set for their midday meal. Ushering his wife and daughter back into the hall, they headed up the main staircase to the second-floor galley. Anna couldn't resist stepping into the little balcony's alcove and peering down below, her eyes misting up with tears once again at the beauty and grandeur of the house. Catching up with JD and Gertrude, she was just entering the ensuite rooms when James came rushing in. JD was explaining the layout of the rooms to Gertrude. This is where your mother and I will sleep, and if you look through our dressing room, you see the door into the nursery where Catherine and Joe Jr. are resting. And as if on cue, having heard his father's voice, Joe Jr. burst through the door and raced towards his father. I'm not resting, he stated. I was waiting for you. Nurse appeared in the door, speaking quietly as the baby was napping. So sorry, sir. I can take Joe Jr. back in if you please. Thank you, nurse, but no need. We'll tour the bedrooms together and then take him down to dinner. He then turned his attention back to his family and led them through the bathroom into the sitting room. Where's the bed for this room, Papa? Joe Jr. was quick to observe and question. This is the room where your mother and I will sit and relax before going to bed. It is our sitting room. James was already through the short connecting hall into the next room. This one seems kind of girly, he commented as he examined the room and opened the closet where Gertrude's clothes were hanging. Guess it's where Gertrude's sleeping. Gertrude examined the room more thoroughly, testing the bed and smiling up at her father and mother. Do you think you can get used to this as well? JD teased her. Oh, yes, Papa, she whispered, eyes shining. Oh, yes. They passed through the bathroom that connected to the next room where James was already going through his belongings and setting things up the way he pleased. JD opened the door that led back out onto the second-floor galley. Papa, Gertrude asked, observing the room to their right, this bedroom isn't connected to the others. How come? Anna answered, this is our main guest room where we can invite others to visit and stay with us. Who would want to come sleep with us? Joe Jr. asked of the incredible notion. Well, Anna continued, I do believe your grandmother Wells is most anxious to be our first guest. For my birthday? No, Anna watched his excitement deflate. We will have to wait for the weather to improve for traveling, I think, for Grandmother Wells to make the trip west. Oh, Joe Jr. brightened. Okay. I think it is time we head down to the dining room, JD said as he checked his watch. Anna, surprised at the time, stated, JD, we need a clock, a grandfather clock to signal the time. All in due time, JD agreed as they made their way back to the main stairway. James took the long way around by racing past them at the top of the main stairs and descending the parallel case that came out by the porte cochere foyer. He appeared at the bottom of the stairs to be nonchalantly waiting for them to join him. How'd you do that? Gertrude marveled. James just smiled. As they gathered in the dining room for their first meal together in their new home, JD offered up a prayer, filled with gratitude for the many blessings that surrounded them and continued blessings for the new year. He then proceeded to entertain his children with the following proclamation. This dining room has a special feature, he began, mysteriously looking around. It allows me to call the butler to the table, he lowered his voice to a whisper, with just my mind. He then asked everyone to be very quiet, and within moments the butler was entering the room. You called, sir? The children looked at each other in bewilderment. Yes, I believe James here needs his glass refilled. Dutifully, the butler saw to the matter and left the room. That was some kind of tricky plan, James was quick to state. I think he came in because we all got quiet and he was just saying why, added Gertrude. Anna, JD declared, we are raising skeptics. He turned to his children and said, fine, I will demonstrate the ability again. This time, while everybody is eating and talking normally, I will summon the butler with my mind. But how will we know he isn't just showing up on his own accord, James persisted. I will call him as soon as I see that your plate is empty, something he couldn't possibly see or know without me calling him. And sure enough, as soon as James had finished his food, the butler appeared again. You called, sir? Yes. James is finished with his meal and his plate is ready to be cleared. Anna hid her smile behind her napkin at her husband's teasing as she watched 3 pairs of eyes grow large with wonder. It was many meals before the truth about the hidden buzzers under the carpet at each end of the table was revealed, and their father's supernatural ability was debunked. That night, after the children had all been settled in their new beds, Anna stood watching the snow as it fell softly outside their sitting room window. She sighed and turned to her husband. It has been an amazing day and such a wonderful start to the new year, 1897. She paused. I can hardly believe it's all real. The house, us here, everything so beautiful and perfect. It is real, all right, JD replied. And the best part of it all is that we get to wake up tomorrow here in our new home and do it all again. The end.